All right, welcome in Tailgate Week 2 here on Better Sports Network. Campus2Canton crew here. We're going to be with you for the next 2 hours. We're going to talk everything to get you guys ready for the slate of games today. Austin, Colin, Nick, and Chris here. Colin, is this your first episode back since last season? You brought the Amish Mafia on us, and then we banished you to never show up here again?
Yes, it is the first time. It's been about a full year, so I think I can come out of hiding now. I don't think the Amish Mafia is coming after me.
They're triangulating your location. Well, they're not because
they're not
not
watching the show. I promise.
Call back to last season for anybody that was here. Then good morning, Brad. Thanks for hopping in here with us. In the chat, guys, feel free to drop some start-sit questions, other questions you have here as we're going through the show. We're going to cover a ton of stuff here. We're going to cover a little bit of the games that already happened. We're going to talk some of our projections for the week in terms of start-sits. We're going to talk some prize picks, some betting, you name it. We're covering it here this morning. I think there's no better place to start off than what's already happened here. We've had a couple of games already for the week. But perhaps the most interesting one for fantasy players, which we all are, was that Louisville performance. A little iffy in the first half of week 1, put together a much better game here week 2, albeit against much weaker opposition. Chris, leading receiver Jamari Thrash is doing what Brahms' leading receiver usually does. Jawar Jordan been very efficient. I mean, talk to me about this Louisville team and how we can expect them to look the rest of the season here.
Yeah, Jamari Thrash had like a different gear than everyone on Murray State. Like he was breaking away and just like 15 yards of separation at the end of a run. I mean, Thrash is going to be great. He's clearly the wide receiver 1 there. I think Plummer can make the throws that he needs to. You should be excited about Jawar Jordan as well. I think he's kind of solidified the RB1 role, and they'll do a little bit of rotating behind him. But I mean, in this game, he had the least amount of carries of like the top 3 backs and averaged 19 yards per carry. So that kind of tells you what to think of his 7 carries. He's a good player. We were on him in the preseason as well, and I think we're pretty excited. But one of the bigger takeaways here for me was this Louisville secondary was terrible, and they weren't good week 1 against Georgia Tech either. But like DJ Williams and Eric Phoenix, the Murray State quarterbacks, they could not hit a pass, but they had a lot of open wide receivers. And if you've open wide receivers against Louisville and your Murray State, like that's a problem for Louisville. So I think you're going to see a lot of high-scoring games for the Cards this year. And that's good for fantasy. I mean, we want to see that. So that was a big takeaway that I had. I was like, oh, man, if this team actually was competent passing the football. Like Murray State's a low-end FCS school. If there was like a competent passer under center for them, I think that they could have put up some points. So that concerns me long-term.
Well, Chris, let me ask you, because I'm looking at their schedule for the next couple of weeks here. They have Indiana and Boston College the next couple of weeks. I don't know that those are teams that are necessarily going to kill them through the air. But then here's this stretch here. We firing up the quarterbacks in all these games moving forward. They got NC State, Brennan Armstrong.
Probably. He looked pretty bad last week, though.
He did. But,
probably.
Week 1 rust. Notre Dame the following week.
Of course.
Firing Sam Hartman up there. Pitt. Phil Jerkovic?
You tell me. Am I firing up Phil Jerkovic?
You're never firing up Phil Jerkovic.
Okay.
The week after that, Riley Leonard at Duke.
Of course.
And then you've got the Virginia schools the 2 weeks after that. So
I will probably not play a single Virginia player in any fantasy format this year.
Yeah, but I mean I think there are definitely some weeks to take advantage of that defense if they are as bad as you say. Nick, I do just want to ask you real quick before we get into some of our projections for this week, what we expect to be happening. Illinois running backs last night struggled a little bit there in that game. They got really far behind, made it look respectable. If you didn't watch the game, you might think that this was a close one, but it really wasn't, was it?
No, this is one that Kansas pretty much had control of from the beginning. Jalen Daniels looked maybe even better than we expected, but certainly a great start for him and great to see him back. Big day from Devin Neal, which is nice to see. Daniel Hishaw's a great compliment to him as well. But yeah, I was really high on the Illinois running back duo pretty much all off season. I've been a Josh McCray fan for a couple of years now. I was really impressed with him as a true freshman. He was severely limited last year. But thought that he was probably in line for a really, really good season. we heard a lot of rumblings, in spring and early fall that Reggie Love was actually going to get maybe the first snaps, and that does appear to be the case. But they're pretty much a even split for the most part. And I thought it was a really good matchup against Kansas. Kansas really, really struggled defensively last year, especially against the run. And they look like a much improved unit. And, the fact that Illinois fell behind as much as they did, as early as they did, really changed things. We will, I think, get more than 12 carries combined between the two moving forward. But the lack of success that Illinois had running the football with two guys that I'm particularly was pretty high on, but now am definitely concerned. Not only that they are likely to continue to carry the load, I think, but the offensive line really struggled. They've had some injuries up front a little bit. The right side of the offensive line is giving them some trouble. And then, if Kansas isn't significantly improved, then that was a really, really bad sign last night, though. Kansas did look much better, and that probably factors in a little bit. But I'm a little concerned because I was pretty invested in McCray, and slightly less so in Love, but him as well.
All right, enough about what has happened already. Let's talk about what we think it's going to happen this week. And before we do that, real quick, somebody asked our resident South Carolina expert, Chris Moxley, Antoine Wells or Leggett today. Wells, I'm assuming, is probably not going to play versus Furman. Seems like that's unnecessary.
I don't know that Wells is going to play today. Yeah. But Leggett, had a huge week last week. I think he's the wide receiver one de facto until Wells comes back and is healthy. If Wells does play today, he might be a decoy again, but do you really need him to run him out against Furman? Probably not. The Platins are pretty good, but South Carolina's an SEC school. They should handle him. Fingers crossed. But I don't expect Wells to play.
There we go. All right. I see a DFS question in there. I can't speak for all of us. I don't play DFS. Colin doesn't play DFS. I don't think any of us are big DFS.
I don't play on FanDuel because the pricing is so whack, and it makes it pretty tough. So I stick to DraftKings. And the prices are not really comparable.
Yep.
To be totally honest, I don't want to speak out of something that I don't have experience with. But
yeah.
I will say the slate on DraftKings is kind of messed up depending on how you were attacking Michael Pratt with his injury news. So that's the one DFS takeaway this morning, I think, that people need to adjust to.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our projections for this week. We've got producer Ernie behind the scenes, and he's going to bring up this lovely QB list that we have going here for week one, or for week two. All right, guys. Caleb Williams, king again in our projections for this week. Look at that, sitting atop the list here. Very just a huge list of recognizable names. Michael Penix at Washington is second. Frank Harris at UTSA third. Can he bounce back from last week's disappointing performance? Joe Milton, Tennessee, number 4. JJ McCarthy, number 5. Garrett Schrader at Syracuse. They had a nice opener against Colgate last week in the top 6 projected this week. Austin Reed from Western Kentucky, 7th. Daquan Finn from Toledo, 8th. Jordan Travis, 9th from Florida State. He had a nice performance last week as well. Dylan Gabriel going up against SMU, 10th. Talia Tagovailoa from Maryland, 11th. KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, 12th. Brady Cook, I think that's the most interesting name on here, 13th. They do get Middle Tennessee State this week, I believe. And then Mitch Griffiths rounds out our top group here. Nick, I'm going to come to you first. We'll go around here. Any names really stand out to you there, surprising or otherwise?
Yeah, some. I really find it interesting to compare the projections that I do, the CFP Winning Edge weekly projections, to these. And I think it's important to take in as much information as possible in different perspectives and different, ways of calculating things and projecting things. But the first that popped out to me, unless I missed him when I was glancing at it quickly, I didn't see Donovan Smith on the list. He's third this week for me in my projections. Really, really high on Houston this week. And then I did.
And your numbers have been high on Donovan Smith. Were you one of the ones that had him as potentially the top QB overall this year if things play out?
He was top 5 in preseason numbers. Yeah. So,
okay.
So yeah, my projections definitely have been on the high end. But I think it's a pretty decent matchup, and it's one I think that we'll talk a little bit about maybe a little later. But yeah, high on Donovan Smith for sure. And I'm a little lower on a couple of guys. Schrader was not in my top 15 or 20, and Brady Cook not mine as well. But both of those guys, I think, certainly have promise and good matchups this week. So definitely interesting to see how they compare to the numbers that I put together.
Yeah, we do not manually adjust those at all. So Cook is one that I wouldn't have in my top 15 this week. Not that I have a model or any sort of knowledge to be able to create a model. That's one that just wouldn't appear for me. Colin, do you agree? Brady Cook kind of stands out. I mean, I think he's probably going to have a good week. They should win pretty comfortably here in this one.
Yeah, I think they'll win pretty comfortably here in this one. And Brady Cook does have like a deceptive rushing ability. Like you don't always think of him as somebody who can take off and run, but he can pick up some chunks of yards with his.
What do you mean by that, Colin? What do you mean deceptive rushing ability?
He just
explain yourself.
He does not look like he would be a rusher out there on the field.
Yeah, what does that mean?
He's not particularly explosive.
Colin's
got
the shovel, just digging deeper every time he answers another question. Okay.
But so that could help raise his floor a little bit there. But with this game, I think they're going to handle Middle Tennessee State. So they'll probably be up, and game script won't ask him to do too much.
Yeah, it's actually why I've taken some Cody Schrader props later, because I think this one might they might not have to pass too much, which is really the worry there. Chris, any thoughts on the quarterbacks here before we talk about some of our running back projections here for week 2?
It felt pretty chalk to me. I understand the Cook skepticism. I think he looks like a better runner than Colin does, for what it's worth. And I think there's a little bit of value on the ground for him this week. So I'm not like totally out on him. But yeah, I mean, it's chalk. I'm a little worried about Garrett Schrader. I don't know the passing volume is going to be there. We have in our top 10. They're 25-point favorites against Western Michigan. So I expect this probably to be more of a LaQuint Allen week for them. But, I mean, Schrader can also throw like 3 touchdowns on like 10 passes. This Western Michigan team stinks.
Or rush for a couple. That's always the thing with Schrader there. One name that I think was notably absent there was Kyle McCord, right? I don't think I said Kyle McCord. It's still morning, but I don't think I missed that. Disappointing performance last week, but they have Youngstown State, and we're going to get to the receivers here in a second. We have Marvin Harrison projected as the top guy this week, so I don't know. I mean, should if you're worried about Kyle McCord this week, should I play him, Nick?
So one thing I mentioned in our Discord earlier in the week, this matchup against Youngstown State, and specifically the way things went last week, feels like a real opportunity for Ryan Day and Ohio State to say, all right, let's create some positive buzz here. Let's let Kyle McCord just open it up and put together a strong first half through the air. So I do think that it's a nice week, a nice matchup for Kyle McCord. I mean, the projections wise, he's top 25. Nothing super special. I do think, we're going to see Devin Brown some, of course, but the way I expect the game to play out, I think that Ohio State is going to come out firing much more so against an FCS opponent than maybe we would have expected prior to what we saw last week.
Colin, is this if that does not happen this week? If McCord struggles, at least statistically, again this week, how tempted are you to start benching Ohio State assets in a format that, unlike the NFL fantasy season, which feels very short, we get like you really get like 6-7 weeks to kind of figure this out, and then like the playoff picture starts getting set by that point. I mean, you got to make decisions here after week 2, right?
Yeah, you have to start considering, maybe not moving forward with like Emeka Egbuka in your lineup. Like, I don't know if I would ever sit Marvin Harrison Jr. just because if you do, and he goes off, like, I mean, he is the best wide receiver in college football, and this statistically it should come there. Like, I feel like Ohio State will get that offense figured out, but if we do see another poor performance here against Youngstown State, you have to start considering some of the ancillary pieces, like you said. Like I would start reconsidering Travion or Mayan Williams, maybe.
I'm already reconsidering Travion, just straight up already considering that.
But I think they'll get it. This will be kind of a get right game. Like one of McCord or Brown, I think, will emerge from this game and look better than the other. And I think we'll get a clearer picture of that moving forward.
They're 42-point favorites. I'm not worried about this offense this week. They're going to score.
I'm not either. But doesn't the alarm have to sound if they don't produce this week? I mean, that would be the ultimate red flag. I think.
If they don't score 40 points against Youngstown State this week, I mean, we got problems in Columbus.
And we've got a very smug individual saying shocked in the chat here. I'm not, someone listening to the show, somebody who, certainly has better things to do. They're definitely not at the Colorado game or anything. But thank you for tuning in, sir. We appreciate it. Let's look at the running back rankings here this week, guys. I think these are pretty chalky too. I didn't see a ton of surprises on here. Rasheen Ali, the top guy here. They have a pretty weak opponent overall. Will Shipley, likewise for Clemson at 2. Kavorian Barnes, number 3. He had a good, not amazing week last week. Probably looking to build on that. Trey Benson, number 4 at FSU. Number 5, Blake Watson. I think that's an interesting name that we can discuss here. Transferred this offseason. Memphis now, correct? I'm not imagining that. And had a pretty nice game last week. Number 6, Bucky Irving at Oregon. 7, Joquavius Marks, who had a very nice performance in week 1. Quinshon Judkins down at Ole Miss. Number 8, Jalen White, Georgia Southern. I get Georgia Southern, Georgia State confused every time. Cody Schrader, Missouri, 10. Braylon Allen at Wisconsin, 11. Donovan Edwards. Our numbers just really prefer Edwards over Corum every week here. 12. Roman Hemby at Maryland here at 13. And then Marshawn Lloyd from USC at 14. They get presumably their toughest matchup of the season here so far against a not great Stanford. That tells you how their first couple weeks have gone. Colin, I'll come to you. I don't know. Talk to me. What stands out to you there on that list?
I think one thing that stands out to me is Blake Watson, like you mentioned there. I think it's a good call having him as high as we do because they get Arkansas State this week, and Arkansas State got absolutely destroyed last week by Oklahoma, 73-0. Memphis isn't Oklahoma, but they do have a pretty high-powered offense. Seth Hennigan is a good quarterback. He can move the ball. And Blake Watson gets a lot of receiving game work as well. So especially in PPR, I think he could be in for a monster day. He could end up being the RB1 this week with that type of a performance, assuming that Jay Ducker is still out.
Does the they played Bethune-Cookman or whatever it is last week, a blowout, only 10 carries. I'm assuming that was mostly game script dependent. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't sit down to watch. I'm not that much of a degenerate. I didn't watch Memphis BCU, but 3 touchdowns, so could see a similar performance this week. Nick, anything different from your numbers? I'm gonna go on a limb and say you probably don't have Blake Watson top.
So I was trying to find Blake Watson. I think that it's great that he's as high as he is because I absolutely agree. I mean, I didn't do a whole lot of manual adjustments after week 1 to my numbers, but Arkansas State was just it was so bad that they were one of the few teams that I had to downgrade just a little bit. And I do think it's a great matchup. And like Colin said, Blake Watson, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and do some great things there, I think is really interesting. One name that did catch my eye, Blake Watson's old team, I was surprised that I've got Keyshawn Wicks as high as I do against Louisiana today. He's top 15 in my numbers. And then one that Chris mentioned just a little bit ago, LaQuint Allen. My projections are really, really high on him this week, top 10. And Jermaine Brown Jr. I caught a little bit of the UAB North Carolina A&T game last week, and it was really, really interesting to see what UAB is doing with Jermaine Brown Jr., using him as a receiver as well as a running back, and that matchup against Georgia Southern is pretty good this week, I think.
Is that a good thing for him, Nick? I think it's an interesting discussion for Brown, like that he's playing both. And sometimes that doesn't always work out how we think it will. Like
right, yeah. From a like a pure football standpoint, I love it. From a fantasy standpoint, it isn't always what we want to see. But I think it I think it works. I mean, he technically started at receiver last week, played his first 2 or 3 snaps at receiver, but then was clearly being used as a running back pretty often as well. So, a little bit of a step up in competition against Georgia Southern. It'll be interesting to see if plans change, but I was very low on Jermaine Brown Jr. coming into the year. Just didn't know what to expect by this UAB offense, but I'm getting more and more interested and more optimistic. So I'll be watching that one closer this week because, there's some reason perhaps to be concerned if he ends up playing half his time as a receiver, but they got him, plenty of touches when he was out wide or in the slot as well. So something to monitor for sure, but I'm optimistic more so now than I was for sure.
See people hopping up in the chat here. Good morning, good afternoon, Kev. I know you are across the pond there, so thanks for hopping in here with us pregame. Getting an afternoon off from your Tottenham debacles here early in the season. I know that for sure. Chris, any running back stand out to you, good or bad here? I agree on LaQuinn Allen, by the way, Nick. I think I like him quite a bit this week too.
Yeah, I was going to call it LaQuinn Allen, but y'all handled that. I'm not worried about this UTSA offense all that much. So I like Kavori and Barnes. I thought they played pretty poorly last week, all things considered. A really disappointing performance for the total, which I think was in the 60s, and I don't even know if they hit 30. But yeah, I am still on this UTSA team. Texas State, who they get this week, they have the second most roster turnover after Colorado, and I don't think the defense is in particularly good shape either. So I really like Barnes this week. I'm going back to the well on this UTSA offense. Week 1 does not scare me for what it's worth.
Do you think they cover in that game, by the way?
What's it at right now? 14?
Did it get to 14? I saw 13 and a half hanging around all week.
I don't know. They could lose the game outright, or they could cover by like 20.
If they lose that game, I took their preseason win total under.
What was it, like 9?
No, it was 7.5. I took the under. I took the under. It was plus 140. I think there's a legitimate chance this team is bad this year, man. I'm telling you.
So, yeah, okay. There's some 13.5s out there. Oh, man, I don't know how I feel about this game. I have no idea what to think of Texas State right now. Like, I love them in the preseason. Like, I was really excited about G.J. Kinney, and I have their win total over too. And that Baylor game is going to help us get a good chunk of the way there. But I don't know. That's a big number. 14 versus a Texas State team that won as a 28.5 point underdog versus Baylor.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch there for sure. Let's hop into wide receivers. I see some people clamoring for some guys already. J. Michael Sturdivant, shout out in the chat, who had a nice week last week for UCLA. Our wide receiver projections for this week. And as I said before, Marvin Harrison Jr., number 1, was number 1 last week as well. Jalen McMillan, number 2, had a nice week for Washington last week. Malachi Corley, that's an interesting one. Oh, I have him on here twice. That's completely my bad. Taj Washington at number 4. Trey Harris at number 5. He had 3 touchdowns in 5 minutes last week. Roma Dunze, number 6, Washington as well. Joshua Cephas, the leading guy here for UTSA early in the season. Troy Franklin at number 8. Number 9, Emeka Egbuka. We got both Washington guys on here. Ryan O'Keefe from Boston College at 10. Sam Pinckney could be in for a big season there at Coastal Carolina. And then Tyrell Vaughn down there in the last slot. Colin, I don't know. I mean, any names stand out to you there? Besides Malachi Corley going to be so good that he is both the 3rd and the 12th receiver this week.
The same with Taj and Tage Washington.
No,
I
think Who made that?
I think the one thing that really stands out to me is Trey Harris being as high as he is. I know he had an insane performance last week. You mentioned how hyper efficient that was with those 3 touchdowns. So I don't think that's repeatable. I think he'll have a good week. But I think this game against Tulane is going to be closer than it was last week, obviously. Michael Pratt's health is really going to have an impact on that. If he's not playing, then game script's going to set up pretty poorly for Trey Harris. if he is playing, it could stay a little closer, which could help Trey Harris have that bump. But either way, I don't think he's going to have quite the same week he did last week.
I mean, expecting that kind of explosive performance out of anybody, probably difficult. Nick, any names stand out in your rankings that we don't have, or vice versa?
So a few that maybe I would consider adding, and I know they play early, so you have to act quickly. But Jamal Banks from Wake Forest didn't actually start last week, and only listed as a co-starter on the depth chart, which is a little weird, but still went for over 100 and against Vandy, I think is a really nice matchup. Lincoln Victor, it seems like after week 1 is high or has the potential to step into that top role for Washington State. Wisconsin maybe isn't the same old Wisconsin that we saw in years past. Malachi Corley, I think, is an interesting one because he went down, looked bad last week. He's tweeted out, everything's fine, I'm good to go. I am skeptical. The matchup against Houston Christian, not a good FCS opponent. If he plays, and maybe they put him out there as like he's good to go. I just don't see him playing very long. Like why risk it? He had a little bit of a scary looking situation last week, so I'm personally lower than the projections because obviously the projections love Malachi Corley, but just trying to game through the what seems most likely to happen. I just don't expect him to be on the field long enough to be as productive as we might expect.
Does that mean that you're sitting Malachi Corley in spots where you have him?
I'm considering it. Like if I have a really strong team, or if I don't have the auto sub feature in a league, I would consider it. But if you do have, I don't know, if you do have an auto sub situation and he goes out and plays 5 snaps, then you're probably in a bad spot. So it's a tough call. But if you can get away with it, I would consider pitching him.
Dalvin Smith, the biggest beneficiary if he's out or limited or otherwise?
Yeah, I think so. And another name that's kind of climbing up the list is Blue Smith, transfer most recently from Cincinnati, prior to that, Ohio State. I think Smith is the next most likely top target.
Dabba dee, dabba die. All right, Chris. Any wide receivers that you like this week? Wow, Colin was the only one that got that. I'm disappointed in you guys.
It's a 90s reference, or late 90s reference. I get it.
Eiffel 65. I don't know. I mean, I wonder about Ryan O'Keefe. Trevor in the chat there has my same concern, which is Thomas Castellanos is going to be the starter this week. And that concerns me. He's really not a pass. I think only one school recruited him as a quarterback, and that was UCF, Gus Malzahn, who, of course, he recruited this dude as a quarterback because he's really a running back. He had some completions last week. He was the only reason that the game was able to be a little bit competitive. But supporting O'Keefe, I don't know. I kind of like this Holy Cross team. It opened at 9.5. I was really looking for a 10, but Holy Cross is not a bad FCS team, and Boston College is pretty bad. They might be the worst team in the Power 5. Well, Northwestern still exists, but they're down there, so that concerns me.
Yeah, he completed Castellanos completed fewer than 50% of his passes last week. You would figure, I guess, the flip side of that is that Ryan O'Keefe is kind of the guy that you scheme open in the short quickly, and those are the easy passes, quote unquote. Yeah. So if a guy's going to get volume, I guess it's going to be him. I guess that's the other side of the coin. But I don't disagree. Or
maybe he just, Castellanos scrambling around back there, and O'Keefe just goes with that speed, takes one over the top.
Could be. I didn't watch that game last week either.
I like O'Keefe, the player.
I watched a lot last week, but not this.
I was pretty high on O'Keefe in the offseason too, so I'm just grasping at straws here.
That's Colin's MO there. Tight ends real quick, guys, here, and then we're actually going to go to break here in just a few minutes. But the tight ends here for the week are projections like. And I think it's I think this week's list is a little more chalky than last week's. Last week's had some odd names in there, and it was kind of an odd week for tight end scoring. But you're going to see your Bowers, your Gadsden, your RJ Maryland all in the top 4 there. I think those guys should be considered in that range every single week. Corey Dyches, I think, is interesting from Maryland. He's basically a wide receiver that's listed as a tight end. Cameron Height from Wake Forest had a pretty nice game last week. So as with the tight end position, maybe you're chasing points, maybe you're not. Ben Sinnott, a nice week last week for Kansas State. Alec Haller, that was a name that I really was not familiar with before this week, but he's at UCF there. Luke Lachey at Iowa at 8. Colston Loveland, Michigan, number 9. Amari Nyblack at Alabama, number 10. Jalen Conyers, Arizona State at 11. Josiah Miamin at FIU at 12. Harold Fannin at Bowling Green, favorite of the show. And then Mason Taylor from LSU at 14. Chris, your guy Fannin made it. I started him in one place last week. That didn't work out so well for me.
It was Liberty, who we expect to be one of the better, group of 5 teams, I guess. Although, I don't know, different conversation for a different day. But yeah, I like Harold Fannin. I mean, I feel like I drafted Harold Fannin in like 90% of leagues this offseason, so I really need him to work out. But the usage that we've seen from the tight end position at Bowling Green over the last, really since Scott Leffler has been there, has been pretty encouraging. And he got rush attempts again last week too, so they want to use him like a variety of different ways. So I still like Fannin. I like this matchup this week as well to play an FCS team. So roll with him, man. I'm starting him.
All right, there we go. That's the endorsement that I needed. Nick, I need some other endorsements here. What should I be doing? Help me with my tight end situation.
Well, one that I think was surprising not to see, and I had to do a manual adjustment for this because we talked about it, I think, last week's show. Benjamin Yurcek just had a huge game against Hawaii.
He was literally the next name for what it's worth. And
yeah.
I almost tried to sneak him on there.
But I mean, the way I do projections, it looks at a 3-year window for the team and then the play caller and the head coach as well. And Troy Taylor, just traditionally the last few years has not utilized the tight end position, but obviously, looks like we will this year. And USC is a decent matchup as well. So he's higher in my projections, but that's because I just overrode the numbers. But a couple to just a note, maybe Jalen Conyers missed the second half of last week with an apparent injury, similar to Corley. He says, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to be back, but just something to monitor. And Oklahoma State, they need him. I'm sure he will do his best to get out there and play, but just something to potentially be aware of there. But, one name I was really happy to see, Colston Loveland, just one of my personal favorites, and against UNLV, pretty nice matchup as well today.
Yeah. Colin, any final thoughts on tight end here before we go to break?
Yeah, I think the one name that's missing there that also kind of just missed out is Drake Dabney for Baylor. Huge game last week, 9 targets, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns in that high scoring affair against Texas State. They get Utah this week. They also probably have Sawyer Robertson under center, it sounds like. So I think Sawyer Robertson's more of a dink and dunk kind of a guy. So I think Dabney could pick up some nice volume here. I'm not too scared off by that matchup against Utah. If you're struggling at tight end this week, you have, the San Jose State guys who are on bye. You have Dallin Holker, who's also on a bye. Drake Dabney, I don't think is a bad option to go with this week.
All right. Yeah. Obviously some worry that last week might be a mirage, right? I think it was almost like 20% of his total college production or something in that one game. And he's a senior he's been around a long time. Could just be his year. Who knows? All right, guys. Well, we're going to go to break here. When we come back, we're going to talk some start sits, highlight some names that we think should be on your radars here for this week. This is the Campus Canton Tailgate on Better Sports Network.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here. We got
baby, let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the
19.
big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess
exciting.
somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let's see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 gem mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit. Then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
This is the Tailgate, brought to you by Campus2Canton.com with a little help from our friends here at Better Sports Network. You've got us here this morning, Colin, Nick, Chris, and myself, Austin, going through all sorts of different college football start sits for fantasy, for betting, for prize picks, and everything in between. Go ahead, drop where you're listening from in the comments. Ask us if you got some start sit questions this morning. I know I've got problems. During the breaks, I go in and fiddle with my teams. Let's get into some start sits here, though. Maybe you guys can help me out here a little bit with some guys that I should be looking at. Nick, what has come straight to you first on a start here? Highlight a guy that, not an obvious name, but a guy that you think could have a nice week.
Well, so one thing that I kept a pretty close eye on most of the offseason, tried to figure out who the top wide receiver is going to be at USF. They bring in Alex Golish, who is the offensive coordinator at Tennessee. Expect them to run the same offense, has an opportunity to be very, very productive. And there was not really a lot of information to go on as far as who that could be. And after week one, I feel pretty good about Coffrey Brown. And I know there are some folks that are high on like Naeem Simmons. Sean Atkins has been a fairly consistent performer for USF for a while now. And Brown is somebody that was a highly rated player coming out of high school, showed some flashes at North Carolina, transferred to USF, hasn't really done much. And last week, folks could argue that maybe he was just the beneficiary of one long play, but he got 72 snaps, second most for USF receivers. And I think has an opportunity to, really become the top option for what's probably going to be Byron Brown. Seems like it will be. And so I picked him up a bunch of places, and I was trying to think through it. And if you're not going to start him this week against Florida A&M, why go through the process of really picking him up? Like, this is perhaps the best opportunity for him to emerge as, if not the clear number one, a top two option in what could be, maybe should be, USF's best chance to put up a really strong offensive performance. Florida A&M is pretty good FCS team, top 25, top 30 type team. But this week, I think, is a really good matchup. And Coffee Brown, somebody that, if not now, win, and might as well take advantage of it now.
If not now, win. That's a new morning affirmation for me, Nick. So thank you for that here this morning. Colin, who do you like this week?
I like Jeff Sims, quarterback for Nebraska this week. They go up against Colorado. Colorado offensively looked way better than we kind of expected week one. That was like a big theme of our shows across the week here this week is how cohesive Colorado actually looked, especially on the offensive line. So that offense is probably going to be clicking. If Nebraska hopes to keep up with them, they're going to have to score. And Colorado gave up 262 yards on the ground last week, which is sixth most in the country. Jeff Sims is the leading rusher for Nebraska, the quarterback. He had 19 carries last week for 91 yards against a good Minnesota team. So I think that Jeff Sims, we could see over 100 yards on the ground from him and a touchdown. And then on top of whatever you get passing, I like Jeff Sims a lot this week.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game to watch. We don't have that as one of our picks later, but I do think we're going to have to discuss that Colorado game at some point here. I saw Chris was already giving out his thoughts on it this morning on Twitter. Chris, who do you like this week? This is actually a name that I don't know that well, so I think this is interesting.
Yeah, I like the James Madison running back, Kalon Black, who, we talked about him a little bit in the offseason, that he missed last year with an injury, and so we really weren't able to see him at a FBS level, so he's kind of under wraps, I think, for like the fantasy community. But he's a player that I think was a value late in drafts this year. And week one, you saw it. He's the most explosive rusher on that team. He can catch passes. He's a really good player. I like their matchup this week against Virginia. They're favored by 6.5. I think that they could stomp Virginia, to be honest. Virginia's a pretty bad team too. But yeah, I'm buying in a little bit on this James Madison offense again this year. Alonzo Burnett started last week, did not look good. But when Jordan Cloud came in, who I thought was going to win the job in the first place, steady the ship a little bit. I think with him under center, I think Black could see, 15 touches might get what you need for a fantasy start. He's a player that I think I'm going to be starting a little bit more depending on the schedule this year. But I like him, and I'm starting to buy back into this offense.
We got some questions coming in here. That's what we love to see. Tracer asks, Kimani Vidal, the Troy running back, Ches Malusi, the Wisconsin back, or Quentin Joyner, USC back, as my RB2. All the love from Central Utah. Shout out Central Utah.
Who does Troy have again?
Kansas State. So it's a tough matchup. But yeah,
Vidal for me too, then. Yeah.
Huge last week. He's a clear starter. Malusi, even though he had a big week, was number 2, going to split some time with Braylon Allen. Joyner's 3, right?
I think this is the first week that Joyner doesn't get doesn't get as much run, right? I think we start seeing that scaled back a little bit, maybe.
Potentially. I mean, they're a 25-point favorite, but
that's true. But it's not who they had Nevada last week. It's not Nevada either.
Right. But I really like Vidal, and I don't think last week's. I mean, he's probably not going to go for 250, but last week's game was not a fluke, in my opinion. I'm particularly high on Vidal. All
right, and then go ahead, Chris.
No, I was going to say I was a little skeptical of Vidal last week because they brought the transfer running back. Egg on my face. He had like 300 total yards. So I look like an idiot, which fair enough. But yeah, I'm in on Vidal as well. He's probably the best offensive player.
It's really hard to say week one you're desperate, but I was really desperate. I had to start him in a league last week, and that's like the best feeling in the world, where you're like, oh man, okay. I've got 2 people asking about Sam Wiggless. I haven't seen anything definitive yet either way. That's going to come down to kickoff. I might pull.
We didn't know last week until post kickoff, did we? I did not see it in the morning. I saw the Rourke stuff was out there, but the Wiggless stuff was not. But if Wiggless is not playing, I mean, I'm fine going to the secondary options there. By the way, like Miles Cross and Jacoby Jones, I think are values, because I took the over at 58.5. It's now 62.5. Like, I expect it to be a high scoring game. FAU could put up points with Casey Thompson, so I think there's gonna be some back and forth there. But yeah, if Wiggless does not play, I'm fine pivoting to one of the other options on this team. Both probably.
Twitter's filled with people asking Sam Wiglis directly, and surprise, he hasn't answered yet on Twitter whether he was playing this week or not. So that one really shocks me. Danny asks, I need one, Daquan Finn, Tyler Shock, or TJ Finley. That's an interesting group. Finn or Finley are my leans here. What do you guys think?
I would go Finn. I think he's the best player on this list, and they get Texas Southern this week.
I'm a big Tyler Shuck fan, just in general. But I mean, I have been projected highest this week. We'll let the numbers speak for me. Just a little ahead of Shuck, though.
There we go. And I don't think any of those are bad options, Danny, for the record. And it seems, I think the fact that we're all split. I mean, Colin, who's your guy here?
I would lean Finn as well. I think that matchup against Texas Southern and, Finn in what we thought would be one of Toledo's tougher matchups last week against Illinois still came through for you for fantasy purposes. So I would still lean Finn in this one. But like you said, there's not really a bad option there.
I think someone's dog is with you, Colin. I think Daquan Finn is their pick as well. So almost unanimous here on the tailgate. Good morning, everybody that's popping in here. Send us your start sit questions if you got them. That's what we're here for. Let's talk about some guys that we don't expect to have such good weeks here. And Nick, this is breaking my heart. What you have on the sheet here is just really upsetting to me.
Yeah, mine too. Squirrel White is one of my personal favorites. And it wasn't so much that he had a slow week last week, but he went down with an apparent injury. Low body situation, was down for about 30 seconds or a minute. So not a big deal. I don't think he returned to the game. And there was some reporting afterwards, similar to Corley, similar to some other folks we've mentioned, that, he's good to go. But they're playing Austin Peay this week. So why risk it? If there is something that's been at all lingering, I either don't expect him to play or I don't expect him to play much. So I could absolutely be overthinking it. But I think in most cases, probably better safe than sorry with Squirrel White. And then LaDamian Webb, South Alabama. He had been limited by an injury most of fall camp. In week 1 against Tulane, he got half the snaps of Kentrell Bullock, the other running back there at South Alabama. So, I wonder as well, are they maybe going to give him a week to just sort of rest up, get fully healthy before they get ready to head into Sunbelt play. So those two are favorites of mine. So I hate it. Makes me sad, but I'm sitting both this week.
Chris?
Yeah, a player who came out of legitimately nowhere last week, Jalen Buckley. I was projecting Zahir Abdus-Salam to be the RB1. Others were projecting Keyshawn King to be the RB1 for Western Michigan. Nobody's right. It's Jalen Buckley. He has 30 carries, pretty dominant. They play with a lot of tempo, which I was also not expecting week 1. But they also stink. Like I have them power rated as a bottom 5 team in the country, and they're going against a Syracuse defense, which is traditionally pretty good. I'm not looking at this Buckley performance saying I got to get him back out there, because that matchup last week was like a cupcake for Western Michigan. And like they still had a little bit of trouble in that matchup. So I'm not trusting Buckley. I probably won't play Buckley the rest of the year unless they're going to be in a really nice matchup situation, just because I feel about this team. And I'm not entirely positive that he's going to be the guy, because we saw Keyshawn King get hurt as well. This is just like a fade what happened last week's situation for me. Completely ignore it. They're 25-point dogs. I'm not touching Western Michigan this week. I'm not touching anybody on Western Michigan this week.
That's one of those where if you end up being wrong on it, then you say, oh, that is what it is, and you move on.
I think it's a good I think just in general it's a good process play to fade anybody who's a 25-point dog and his power rate is a bottom 5 team in the country. That's just me though.
Colin, you're set here for this week?
Yeah, my sit here for this week is Frank Gore Jr., running back for Southern Miss. look, he is one of those guys that's extremely volatile. There's weeks where he'll put up 30 points. There's weeks where he'll put up 3. I think this is just going to be one of those weeks where it's one of those low scoring weeks for him. They play Florida State, which is probably the best team that they will play all year, especially given how Florida State looked last week against that LSU team. So that in and of itself is a reason for me to avoid Frank Gore this week. But he also didn't lead the team in carries last week either. He had 6 carries to Rodriguez Clark, the running back transfer from Memphis. He had 9 carries. So that might be a little bit more of a split than we're expecting. I think Frank Gore will still be fine moving forward. But game script in this one and just a little bit of a concern with workload for me, I'm avoiding him this week.
All fair points there. We've got some more start-sit options coming in. Rutgers running back Samuel Brown, which I haven't seen if he's playing this week or not after missing out on last week's action. Ricky Pearsall from Florida or Michael Wiley as a flex. What do we think, guys? Chris, who do you like here?
I would go Wiley just because I think that he's in the best offense and he's used in both phases of the game. It's definitely the safest play. I don't trust Graham Mertz in this Florida offense, so I don't really want to invest in Ricky Pearsall. And yeah, Sam Brown, I don't have clarity on his injury, so I would just go Wiley, feel the most comfortable. Can I add an injury update, though?
Please do.
Ladd McConkey out again for UGA if you were looking at him. I know he was a little popular at the end of the offseason, so got to sit him again this week.
All right, so Ladd McConkey out. Does that benefit anybody? Is there somebody that you're pivoting to on Georgia's offense with that news? I don't know.
Maybe just play more Brock Bowers if you weren't already starting him in every single league that you would have him.
Or Dominic Lovett potentially.
Yeah,
kind of helps clear the way a little bit for him. I know Jared Palmgren, our resident Georgia expert, has been saying all along that Lovett's the top target there for the wide receiver group this year, and this I think solidifies that even more.
I got one more injury update for y'all. Jaquindon Jackson is on the field for Utah. Doesn't seem to be hampered by injury, according to Josh Furlong, who covers Utah Athletics.
There we go.
So that Utah backfield is still a mess, probably.
Well, there were rumors that Bernard's out, right?
Yeah, and Furlong also mentioned that he doesn't expect to see Bernard this week.
So are we back in on Jaquindon Jackson this week?
Maybe. Another favorite of mine was hurt my feelings last week, but potentially, or maybe we'll see what Jalen Glover can do, perhaps.
Oh, don't get me started on Jalen. All aboard the J train, baby.
I had somebody in the chat here asking guys. They said they're looking for a 10 a.m. 2-leg parlay. So they're out west. Shout out Mile High, Luke. Any ideas on a nice little 10 a.m. 2-legger? Let's win a little cash here this morning, guys. That's really what we're here to do, right?
Wet the beak a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
We have plays later, but I'll give you one now, and whoever else wants to chime in can. I like Holy Cross plus 11 against Boston College. Talked about this earlier. I think Holy Cross can keep this game competitive. I don't think giving them. I just think double digits is a little too much. We saw Boston College last week. I think Holy Cross is a top 15 FCS team in the country. Boston College struggled with NIU, and I think Holy Cross might just be better than NIU is. So, yeah, if you're going to give me double digits in that game, I'll back Holy Cross. That's on 11 is on Bet Rivers.
So I have one that I don't necessarily have a lot of confidence in, but perhaps a
fired up, baby. Let's go.
Leaning into the numbers, which I do try to, I trust our projections more often than not. In that early window, I've got Nebraska as a slight favorite against Colorado in our official CP Winning Edge team strength projections. And I know Chris Moxley doesn't agree with this, but I've got Virginia as a slight favorite over James Madison. I don't really agree with it either personally, but if you parlay the money line on both of those, it pays plus 560 on DraftKings. That's just what I have pulled up. So, might be worth a a little bit just to see if maybe we've got an early read on a couple of wrong teams favored that I don't necessarily have a ton of confidence in.
I disagree on the Virginia one, but I can get behind the first one. I am on Colorado this morning, and I feel like a square because everyone sharp is on Nebraska, but I still doesn't feel great when all the sharp money comes in against you.
Where was the sharp money for Colorado last week?
That's true.
Yeah.
Sharp money. I think sharp money is all over TCU. So I mean,
just saying.
I mean, I like Colorado. I played them. I like them under 3. I don't trust this Nebraska offense to keep up with them.
But let's talk that Colorado game now. Yeah. We might as well. We don't have that as one of our pick'ems here later in the day. Yeah, I mean, you guys are the two betting guys over on the right side here. I mean, talk to me, Nick. Talk to me about this game. What do your numbers say, and how do you feel about this game overall?
Well, so my numbers again don't adjust very much from week 1. So Colorado was a team. I made a little bit of a manual adjustment. Didn't want to overdo it. So I'm still operating cautiously with Colorado because maybe they're just better than we thought they were. And Nebraska, I mean, did we really see enough in their loss against Minnesota to suggest that they are clearly the better team? No, I don't think so. But with a little bit of a manual adjustment in Colorado's favor, I have Nebraska as a less than a half-point favorite, but slightly favored. In 2 other models that I look at, they give me completely different looks. One is a stats-only model, which factors in the recent past for coaches and the teams. Nebraska is about a 5-point favorite in that one. But when I look at my talent only model, which is the complete opposite, only talent numbers, Colorado has really improved that roster, and they're about a 3.5-point favorite in that model. So the 3 numbers that I look at the most give me 3 completely different things. So I personally don't have a great read on it. But officially I'm on Nebraska to win outright in the primary model.
And Chris has already admitted he's a square this morning. So, this is not going well. This is not going well. I don't know. And I'm a square. These were not answers I was hoping for.
I gotcha.
So let me explain why I like Colorado a little bit. I get the emotional letdown of this week. I think that's a big factor after that huge win. Like Deion was acting like they won the national championship. You beat TCU is probably going to be a 6-16 this year. Like pull back just a little bit.
He called a kid that was not his son, while his actual son probably stood 3 feet away off camera and was just like, like that.
Yeah. It was vibes only after that Colorado win, which was great. But does anyone here trust Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator at Nebraska? Because I don't. Because I saw him at South Carolina the last 3 years and he sucks. Or 2 years. He sucks. He's one of the worst offensive play callers in the country. Like, I don't think that Nebraska can keep up with this offense. So you're relying on the defense, which I think can scheme up pretty well. But like, it comes down to who's going to score more points. Like, I really find it hard to believe that's going to be Nebraska, even though I think Nebraska can get it going on the ground. I understand why the market is against me on this. I do, but I just can't get there with Nebraska. I really, really don't like the story. The narrative is it's a very low scoring game. They control the possession on the ground. The defense schemes up and they win. I don't know after 511 yards passing last week for Shedeur Sanders that we're really going to be able to contain this offense all that much because they can just out-athlete this Nebraska defense.
Do you think the ultimate way to beat Colorado this year, based on the one game that we've watched, is probably going to be you have to outscore them and not to slow them down? Is that what we're operating under right now?
I don't know if you want to get in a shootout with them. Like,
I mean, TCU, if they hadn't thrown 2 red zone interceptions last week, beats them. So I'm not sure.
And if they decided they should actually just like if they said we're going to run the ball on you, they probably would have also won. I don't know why they were throwing Chandler Morris the whole game because they were getting like 9 yards per carry on the ground. I think the strategy is you want to limit and like keep away as much as you can. Mm-hmm. Get a good defensive game plan to control the speed guys on that offense, Xavier Weaver, Horn, and Travis Hunter. I don't like this Colorado team long term. I took the under on their 5.5 when it reopened on the market this week. There's not enough depth, but they are healthy right now, and that is the difference.
Fair enough, Nick.
No buffs.
Well, I mean, what Mox said, the way maybe you try to beat Colorado is slow them down, keep away, play good defense. That sounds kind of like Nebraska to me.
I know, that's what's scary.
Yeah. All right. So our answer is we don't know. We're gonna go to break here, guys. When we come back, we're gonna talk some prize picks. This is actually one of my favorite things to play every single week. So we're gonna talk that. We're gonna keep checking on injuries, and we're gonna keep answering your questions to make sure that you are getting them in the chat. This is Campus2Canton and the Tailgate.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite. But that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes.
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition. And I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing. But I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside. And now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed. And they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Come on! Let's go! Come on, kick it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire. Over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool!
The champ is here! Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush. You were doing the Instagram Live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're gonna win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no!
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations. And no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
Dance party here on the Tailgate, Campus2Canton, Better Sports Network. Guys, NFL season's kicking off this week, so start your free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's all-pro subscription. Get that fantasy football draft guide, get that cheat sheet, and hop in. I believe they're giving away some DFS information for you this week as well. So go ahead, head over to Fantasy Alarm and get yourself signed up today. Speaking of signed up, we'd like to play some prize picks over at Campus2Canton. That's kind of our thing, I would say. From not familiar with prize picks, it is player lines, guys. Receptions, yardage, touchdowns, you name it. They've got it, and we're playing it. Promo code C2C for first time signers up. Get you an initial deposit match up to $100. So you get $100 free bucks, potentially. and then we're going to help you win some more on top of that. Last week was a plus money week for me. How did you guys fare on Prize Picks last week? I think there were some great lines, and I think we gave out some good ones here on this show overall. So let's win some more money here this week. Nick, I'll just come right over to you first. Lead us off with some of the lines that you like here for this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of my favorites. It's a little too late because they just kicked off, but Jamal Banks over 67.5 receiving yards against Vanderbilt, the Wake Forest wide receiver. But one that, I also really like, similar to, or based on the conversation we had earlier about Ohio State and how I do think that they are going to try their very best to have a big first half throwing the football through the air. I like Emeka Egbuka over 67.5 receiving yards this week. And then one that I feel a little less confident in, but again, want to kind of the purpose of all the work I do putting in the numbers. I feel like I need to trust it when they show a projected edge. And my numbers think that Marcus Carroll is pretty likely to go under 102.5 rushing yards this week. So that'll be an interesting game. I think UConn defensively has a chance to be pretty good this year. And Carroll had a huge game last week. I think is in line for a strong season, but it's hard to rush for 100 yards. And, under 102.5 shows some pretty good value in my projections.
Chris, what do you like?
Yeah, I kind of like some of the earlier plays as well, but that game just kicked off. So I'm going to go with Cornelius Johnson, Michigan wide receiver, over 45.5 receiving yards. He can get this on one play against UNLV. I think this is just a little bit short. I think it should be closer to 60. So, 15 yards of value there. It's pretty good. I like Jay Knott over 15.5 receiving yards. I think he's like the focal point of this offense this week. And they're going against Auburn. So I think they're going to need to throw more than they did last week. And Sam Jackson, I don't expect to play. So that's probably more passing volume as well. And he caught like 46 passes last year. He's already like a well-known and established pass catcher in this offense. So I like Ott to go over that 15.5. And then I'm going to throw you for a loop with this one. Jonah Dalmas, the Boise State kicker, over 1.5 field goals. He is currently on track to break the all-time field goals made record. He needs 21 this season. He needs 42 to do it. He needs 21 this season, 21 next season if he stays for eligibility. He could go the draft. He's a pretty good kicker. He missed an extra point last week, which threw me for a loop because that's not him at all. But this offensive coordinator is a little less aggressive. And Andy Avalos being a defensive-minded head coach, I expect them to settle for field goals more than push it on fourth downs. And they were top 5 in field goal attempts last year. I expect that to continue this year. Game against UCF, I think they can drive on this defense. UCF I think they're pretty good at red zone defense last year. Bend, don't break style. So I like this Dalmas over 1.5 field goals.
A little offended that you just assumed that none of us know who Jonah Dalmas is. So thanks for the condescending talk this morning, Chris.
I was speaking more to the audience. I don't know how in tune they are with G5 kickers.
Everybody knows Jonah Dalmas, man.
Sorry.
I walk down the street and people are like, Jonah Dalmas. Colin, what plays do you like this week on Prize?
No kicker plays. I'm sorry. I don't go quite that deep into the G5 kickers here, but I'll stick with my theme with Jeff Sims. He was a start for me this week. His over rush yardage, the quarterback for Nebraska, it's now at 70.5. When I was looking at it earlier in the week, it was at 60.5. Either way, I love that. Like I said, I could see him going for 100 yards on the ground against this Colorado defense, especially because you guys were talking about the way to beat Colorado is probably to run the ball and limit possessions. And Jeff Sims, 19 carries last week. I think he's going to do it again this week. That's my favorite play by far. I also like Brennan Armstrong under 256.5 pass and rush yards combined. It has dropped a little bit now down to 259.5.
That's up, Colin. I don't know if you're.
Oh, that's up to 59.5. So I like it even more here.
I'm on the wrong side, but I like it even more.
I still like it on this one because they go up against Notre Dame. He didn't have 256.5 yards combined last week in a soft matchup. I don't think he's going to get it this week against Notre Dame. And then the last one that I like is Troy Franklin over 14.5 fantasy points. It was over 13.5 earlier in the week. Still like it at 14.5. I think that this game is going to be pretty high scoring for Oregon for Texas Tech. And Troy Franklin is going to be the number one wide receiver in that offense. The offensive coordinator comes over from UTSA. We liked that offense last year, high volume passing offense. I think they're going to shred Texas Tech through the air. And I see a number of different ways Troy Franklin can get to this number.
Fair enough. A couple that I like this week. I like Drake May over 2.5 pass / rush TD. So basically just Drake May to score 3 touchdowns in any particular way. It's App State. I'm not expecting another, what was it last year? Like 70 to 65 or something ridiculous. But I do think it'll be a high scoring game, and that offense runs through May. I also really like Marquise Irving this week. I know it's a little bit of a high number, but 98.5 rush plus receiving yards against Texas Tech. I think that's way too low. I think I would put that line probably 30 yards more than that if I was making the line myself without any sort of data driven whatever behind that. I think that's too low. I think it goes over that.
There's a lot of money on the receiving yardage over for him.
Is there? Okay. So there we go. What is his receiving yard total at? Do you know?
19.5 on Prize Picks. It was like 16 or 17 earlier. So it's going up. I think that's the right side.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. And actually, I think he's got a fantasy score line too. And I want to just look at that real quick because I like fantasy score if I can. 16.5, book it. Just stamp that. That's actually the better play. 16.5, Bucky Irving fantasy score. He has it by halftime. He has it by halftime. Or you can come back on the show next week and yell at me.
Yeah, you can always call in and yell at Austin.
That's an option. That is an option. That is an option. I got someone in the chat here, by the way, guys, asking start 1, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, or Cameron Ward. And he says, I need a high floor, but also need points. So you want floor and ceiling, you greedy SOB. We can get that for you. Nick and Chris, what do you guys like here?
I think Cam Ward.
Yeah, probably.
I feel the best that Ward gets me more than 10. Like I out of all these guys,
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, Beck might hand off 50 times and then call it a day. And then, because they're 43.5 point favorites against Ball State. And then Dart, Tulane's tough defensively. I know Wisconsin is Wisconsin, but Cam Ward, that offense looked awesome last week. Wisconsin is moving faster, so they're less likely, I think, to play keep away. And I think his ceiling, we saw his ceiling last week, right? It was almost 50 points. So don't expect him to repeat that. But I think Ward has definitely the highest ceiling out of this group.
And the concern that I have with Dart is what the other side of that game looks like. It's very well documented this morning that Michael Pratt is a game time decision. I expect him to play, but be limited. So the totals dropped 2.5 points already this morning as well. So there's some concern with Dart, especially that it just game script doesn't really play out the way we need it to.
Yeah, Colin, do you have any thoughts? Yeah,
I think Ward is exactly what he's looking for here. I need a high floor and also big points. So we saw the upside of Ward last week, like Nick was talking about, but I also think Ward is the highest floor out of this group as well. I think this game is going to be closer than the Georgia game for sure. With Michael Pratt being up in the air as well, Ole Miss could run away with that game if he doesn't play. So I think Ward also offers the highest floor. So I think Ward is the perfect answer here.
Yeah, that's who I think I would go with as well. And I think we had a similar question, slightly different players in our Discord this week that I also leaned Ward. Do we think that offense this season figures it out? I think they might have fixed the offense coordinator stuff. I don't know. They looked pretty good last week. Do we expect this offense to be what we thought it would be last year, essentially? Is a high volume, kind of concentrated target share kind of deal?
I actually really think their offensive coordinator Eric Morris got hired as the head coach at North Texas, and their new offensive coordinator is better than Arbuckle. Don't see that super often, but I'm pretty excited about what this offense can do this year. I still have concerns about Cameron Ward. He's not a great deep passer. He's fairly inaccurate beyond 15 yards, but he probably doesn't have to be this week.
All right. Somebody else actually asking a Ward start sit question, so might as well loop this one in here. I need to start 2 of these quarterbacks: Cameron Ward, I'm assuming Chandler Morris, Drew Allar, and TJ Finley.
Does Penn State get? Oh, they get Delaware.
Yeah, they have a very soft opponent. That could be a run day, though. I mean, that's what makes some of these cupcake matchups make that a little difficult, right?
So I think that Chandler Morris is the name that sticks out to me the most here because TCU got embarrassed on national TV last week, a game that they were 20-point favorites and lost. They play Nichols this week. I think. And maybe I did watch the Carter Boys or whatever, the TCU ESPN Plus show, and the post game talk from Sonny Dykes. I thought, you know what, they are going to, if they can score 80 against Nichols next week, they're going to do that. So I think that maybe we only see Chandler Morris for a little more than 2 quarters, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put up 50 by that point.
All right. And any votes for Finley? I like Finley this week quite a bit.
I was going to say, I think Finley is one of the name on this list that I probably feel the best about overall. I mean, with that Texas State offense last week against a pretty good Baylor team, he looked pretty good.
I will say UTSA's defense was pretty solid last week. They kept Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith actually played fairly well in that game, I thought. He didn't make any mistakes, but they didn't look bad in that game defensively.
No, but I still think that TJ Finley has a number of different ways to perform well for you. I mean, he'll pick up some yards on the ground, and this Texas State offense, I think, is going to air it out. Like, he's going to have the best volume on here, him and Ward probably, but Aller is the one that I would avoid at starting, and that's as a Penn State fan. I wouldn't start Aller this week. This is
the I don't actually like any of these quarterbacks except Drew Aller, but he's the one I'm least likely to start question. I think all these guys are not very good quarterbacks, but sometimes you play the matchup, not the player.
All right. Wise words from Chris Moxley. Some other start sits coming in. Let's answer some of those here real quick. Damian Martinez, Matthew Golden, or Sia Bangura. Anybody have thoughts on these guys here?
I mean, I like Bangura this week. But again, I talked about this FAU game earlier. I expect this FAU Ohio game to be really high scoring. And with Curtis Rourke back, the offense is just in such a better place. And he catches passes too. Damian Martinez, I don't know if it was by design or not, but he was taken out in the red zone like pretty consistently for Deshaun Fenwick last week against San Jose State. And that concerned me. He was not getting the goal line touches. He had he could have run for like 200 yards if he wanted to last week. And I don't know what that usage situation looks like. So I'm a little skeptical.
Well, I'm a little bit worried that DJU is going to
him too.
Because he scored 2 rushing touchdowns last week. But at Martinez, I think one of those, he got a little either winded or just nicked up toward the end of a drive and was out for one of them. But my projection preseason just absolutely loved Damian Martinez. They're a little lower on him this week, but my numbers, as always, it seems, love Matthew Golden. So that would be a really, really intriguing option. Would be tough for me to I don't know, the guy. All these guys are good options and fairly evenly projected for my numbers. So I don't. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut.
by the way, while you were saying you were just talking about Golden, I'm still clicking around on Prize Picks, and I just found Stone Cold the biggest lock of the week on Prize Picks, guys.
What you got?
Stone Cold. Sam Brown, the Houston wide receiver, over 50.5 receiving yards.
Yep.
Just freaking fire as many money as you can at that. Against Rice, looks like he might be their best option, or at least the one they want to target the furthest downfield. He might get that in one play.
I thought the Rice front seven looked pretty good last week.
They did not look bad, but Texas, like they were just running stunts, and Texas was not picking them up at all. Like I think if you're, I don't know.
I mean, but it's Rice. Rice.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying. Like, I know we're going to talk about this game a little bit later, but I think Rice is kind of an interesting team. I don't know. I don't have a strong conviction on this one. I think all three are really good options, and I am ready to watch some punts in Ames, Iowa. Thank you, Luke, in the chat. Really excited about that.
Over under, how many former Iowa State players have money on this game?
Former? Oh, probably a lot. I mean, why not? What's stopping them from betting it now?
Hey, you ruined your career. You might as well continue it. Just keep firing money at this. Yeah, this is an interesting game. I don't even know what the total is in this game.
Was it 36?
Oof. I still might be tempted by the under there. This Iowa State offense is ugly.
And
UGLI, no alibi. Yeah, it's bad. It's really, really bad.
It's actually 35.5 in some spots.
It moved.
Okay. Get 36, I think, still.
Nick, do you have any thoughts on that Iowa State game?
So I almost put in a prize pick with this, because when the projections came out, it's like far and away the biggest projected edge of the week. But the way I look at things sometimes when that happens, it's like, okay, what's wrong? What have I done that's wrong? And Rocco Becht, the Iowa State quarterback, projected for like 250 yards, and his number was 180 or something. I mean, something that just seemed too high anyway. And so I do like to trust the numbers, but then I don't do it blindly either. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a chance we see a little bit more offense here, but that's maybe just wishful thinking.
I actually almost played Caleb Johnson's rushing under, because that front seven for Iowa State's pretty good. So I expect this to be a low scoring game. So Brian Ferentz, for those who don't know or are just getting into the season, Brian Ferentz has a clause in his contract that he has to average 25 points per game this season because of how bad the offense has been for Iowa. The administration made him put it in. He did not hit that week one against Utah State. So we're sure he's going to get close to that this week against Iowa State. That's going to be a fun one to track because we're already starting out not so hot. But the offense looked better last week than what we've seen previously. Like, I like Cade McNamara. I like Luke Lachey. In passing games, maybe the one to target this week. Like Lachey overs. I don't know. I picked Iowa to win this game. I made a play on it earlier this week. I made a play on it in the summer. So
here's Luke Lachey's lines here for anybody who tell me what you guys think of these on Prize Picks. 43.5 receiving yards. We like more or less?
I like more.
More, yeah.
Nick.
Sorry, I was trying to catch some injuries. More, I think.
10.5 as a fantasy score, more or less.
More.
Probably
I think
more.
If anybody scores from this offense, I think he has the best chance.
What do we think of the Iowa State safety situation?
Oh,
let me tell you, I got a lot of
just
thoughts.
like Jonah Dalmas. Let me tell you about the safeties here.
Well, I can tell you that Iowa State, in our position strength ratings, as far as their entire secondary, ranks 104th nationally, 13th in the Big 12. So it's an experienced group, but not particularly highly rated, talent-wise.
I mean, the only good player is Tampa, right? On this back seven,
is the best player.
Yeah.
All conference caliber.
You guys are losing Colin. Look at this guy's face. His eyes are just glazed over now.
I mean, I'm just glazed over always.
Yeah,
we probably lost a listener or two too. Sorry.
Yeah, I like Lachey because I don't like that unit at all. So there you go. Nick's got him 107th.
Producers in my ear saying we've lost the entire audience on this discussion. And then last one, Luke Lachey, 3.5 receptions.
Oh, I like the over on that one too.
Yeah, I did too. I did too. Maybe I'll see if I can. Not that I would ever do this, but hypothetically, if I had to text somebody who lived in a state where Prize Picks was legal, I may have to hypothetically text them a hypothetical play this morning that I've hypothetically drawn up on this show. So, yeah, we'll see there. All right. Nick, you just said you were looking for some injuries. Anything stand out to you here in terms of just stuff that you're tracking? I've been searching Corley and Wiggless, and there's no update there, of course.
Yeah, it was not a huge surprise. Brent Keithy is in street clothes today for Utah. So now Utah is going to be without, most likely, Cam Rising, who was dressed for warmups, but is not getting the number one reps with the number one center in pregame. Michael Bernard is also out. Brent Keithy is now also out officially. And then Army's starting tight end is going to be missing this game. But
you got to get pulled into my lineups. Hang on.
But yeah, so and it looks like Tony Muskett for Virginia probably not going to start. They are starting a true freshman against James Madison, who is one of the better defenses in the group of five. So that money line parlay from earlier is looking great.
I saw Muskett was throwing in the. Oh no, he's not dressed. That just came out 2 minutes ago. I thought Calandra looked pretty good when I was watching the Virginia spring game. Like, he's a pretty mobile quarterback. I know he's a true freshman, but I thought he looked all right.
Yeah. All right. Well, there is a small injury update. We'll be monitoring this as we get closer to kickoff here, guys. We are going to go to break. When we come back, we're actually going to have, I believe, Mike from our Debbie team talking a little bit about some of the guys that we're looking for in terms of NFL draft potential and fantasy potential down the line. So this is Campus2Canton, the Tailgate here on Better Sports Network.
Like Devon Levi started off in the friend zone and now like he could possibly be wife material. So it is exceptionally hard to trust a rookie goalie in the NHL. The kid is what? He's 21. Like, okay. And he is going to the Buffalo Sabres. But we've all agreed that the Buffalo Sabres are at least a somewhat better hockey team on paper. Again, it's hard to trust a rookie goalie. We've seen future Hall of Fame goalies like, Fleury in his first year struggle, right? Carey Price in his first year struggle. It is tough for goalies to come in and have success. That being said, nobody outside of maybe a Buffalo sports fan can tell me who the two goalies on their roster are, because I didn't know until this morning, until I was reminded that it was Eric Comrie and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And I was like, okay, well, he has the crease to himself. So all he can do is lose it. That's all he can do. Buffalo is going to be a fun team to watch, which means maybe Devon Levi ends up in what I call the Martin Jones syndrome, which is a goals against average is pretty up there. Save percentage is not very good, but he's going to finish with 35 wins because he's just going to play a lot. And it's going to be that back and forth hockey. The Atlantic Division is not very good, right? There are some teams that are going to regress. So there's opportunities here for Buffalo to do well. And I think his over-under on wins is set at 24.5. So again, there's a lot of things that I may not trust about him, but as a 13th goalie off the board, and I think that is a reach at 13. I think a lot of people have him farther back than that. So he may be 13 on NHL.com's list, but you may end up and show up in your Yahoo or your ESPN draft, and they haven't ranked probably outside of the top 20. So I would have no issue as a second goalie going with Levi, because like, who's taking his spot? Nobody. And volume at one point, if you're in a league that doesn't penalize you for losses, if you're in a league that rewards saves and save bonuses like, for daily, DraftKings does, he has all that working for him. So if it doesn't work out, all right, fine. Then you can go and pick up whoever is there. But it is his net to lose. I understand the risk. I will definitely take, because that's how you win championships, right? You got to take risks to win them. If you're safe, you're going to finish, eliminated in the first round and you had a good time. Or you can try to win the championship on draft day.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here. We got
let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a
Deion
touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 gem mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit. Then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
Good morning, everyone. Mike here, the other host from the Back to Davey podcast. And I know I'm not quite as handsome as Corey. I'm not quite as tan as Corey. I can't rock the chain like Corey. I can't play guitar like Corey. The list just goes on. I won't get there. But I do know football, and I do know Debbie. So let's get it. Now, I'm going to start with the bad before I get to the good. There's just not a lot of takeaways from stuff that I'm looking at. There's three things I'm looking for: true freshmen, some new faces, and some old faces. Going to the true freshman year, looking at the wide receivers, right? We all know the importance of the year 1-0 theory and beating it. Congrats to Zach Branch. Congrats to Deuce Robinson. First two to beat it. But I'm worried about the ones that belong to teams that blow out FCS competition, like Oregon, beating Portland 81-7 week 1, and Jurion Dickey can only get on the field for 2 snaps. 11 guys caught balls. Not one of them was Jurion Dickey. So I am worried about guys that are high-profile wide receivers that aren't getting on the field for these blowouts. Now, heading over to the new faces here. What I do like seeing are guys stepping up, right? Some teams just have to wait their turn. Also transfers too. Jamari Thrash, Louisville wide receiver came over from the G5 competition, was always efficient with the touches he got in the G5, comes up to Power 5. Jeff Brown's wide receiver 1. We're 2 weeks in, and he looks good. He looks legit. He's going to start being talked about a lot more with the NFL draft coming up. Now, games that I'm watching closely. All offseason, right? We're hearing Texas is back. Miami's back. Backstreet's back. All right? We have Texas versus Alabama. Both teams, I think, had various disappointments in their debuts against weaker competition. Quinn is not clicking on these deep throws. He's 0 for 6 on 20-yard passes downfield. I don't know what's going on. They're not clicking. They got another week to figure it out, but they're playing against Alabama, who does have a little bit of bang-up secondary. So maybe we can see it. But my eyes, specifically for the wide receiver room, is on A.D. Mitchell. Transfer from Georgia. He has all the tools, all the traits to be an NFL guy. He just doesn't have that production profile. He needs to build that this year. And again, these first 4 weeks set the tone for the rest of the season. So my eyes are on A.D. Mitchell. I'm looking at Worthy a little bit. He's got to stop eating those Butterfingers. He can't keep dropping these balls. But I guess he can go sign with the Chiefs because the Chiefs receivers love to drop balls too. So I guess he can go over there. Now let's go to the other side of the ball, Alabama now. Running back room didn't really show up last week. No one really looked too good there. So I'm looking at Chase McClellan, right? A guy that's hyped up as a bounce back guy. We're all excited about him for this upcoming draft class. He looked real thick out there. He also looked like he hit the gym, just like Raheem Sanders. I just didn't see the burst that I was expecting from him. I was disappointed. Again, it's only week 1. Let's see if he can get it going week 2. Jalen Milroe looked great throwing last week. I think we need to give him some credit for that because I thought that would surprise me. So looking at him challenging this defense, who's going to be the Alabama wide receiver 1. We love Alabama wide receiver 1. Isaiah Bond stepped up last week, 5 for 5 for 76 yards and 1 touchdown. Not only is he catching balls short, letting him create on his own, but he's also got to threaten a defense deep. The Texas A&M and Miami game, right? Texas A&M. Look, the QBs in the 2025 class are up for grabs. We all love Drew Aller. Connor Wegman's making a really strong case to be the number 2 guy in that class. Now they beat up on Texas A&M, Texas A&M beat up on New Mexico last week, right? 18 completions and 5 touchdowns for Connor Wegman. Evan Stewart, not worried about it. Noah Thomas, I don't know if he's a Devy guy. I'm a little bit intrigued. He's clearly a red zone target. But that running back room, just like Alabama, doesn't really have a guy. They're just rotating through. So I'm looking at Ruben Owens, another true freshman guy, highly touted, was once the RB1 in the class. I think he finished RB2 towards the end of the cycle. But looking to see who's going to be that next Texas A&M running back that we're going to be talking about. On to Miami. I think this game is really important for Miami. I think they've been overhyped almost every single year, just to be disappointing fans. I think this game's a big deal. I really love this offense. Tyler Van Dyke, quarterback for Miami, is going on to his 3rd offensive coordinator since he's been there. And quite frankly, this probably is the best offensive coordinator he's had there. Last week, he torched the offense with Colby Young, wide receiver, 6'4", 215 pounds. They saw a breakout last year together. Tyler Van Dyke got injured. The breakout ended, and Miami's whole season ended with that injury as well. Colby Young went for 4 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown, taking a screen pass to the house. It was a long screen, too. You got to take note when dudes are 6'4" and they're burning guys out there. So look for Colby Young to build onto that. Maybe this could be a staple game for him because, again, they're beating up on FCS competition, but now they're playing Power 5 defenses. Let's see if Colby Young continue that. And before I get out of here, guys, I got to hype up one of my guys. If you can't tell from the hat, I'm talking about Mountaineer C.J. Donaldson of West Virginia. Last week played against Penn State. Thought he looked good, like 13 rush attempts for like 70-some yards and a touchdown. I mean, that is the hardest defense he's going to play all year. And I thought he looked good running the ball. He has a cakewalk the rest of the year. He's playing famous Pittsburgh, Philadelphia school, Duquesne, I think some of the guys from Campus Life say. But, anyway, it's Duquesne. Watch for him to build that production profile. Watch for him to really elevate his name in this draft process. That's going to wrap it up for our Devy segment, guys. And make sure you check out Corey and I on the Back to Devy crew. We will be every single Wednesday, the best Devy show this side of the equator.
All right, the tailgate here. Campus2Canton here. Better sports. What a team. What a team. Nick, Colin, Chris, and me. Guys, first off, I'm just gonna, Mike, that was a one shot for you. I don't know if we're gonna have you back on here.
We got Davey Crockett bringing us some Devy value.
This guy. All right. Guys, I want to get into some betting picks for the day. And Nick and Chris, you guys are the two here for that. So Colin and I are probably just going to sit here for the next 20 minutes and nod our heads and smile. So why don't you go ahead
and take notes?
I've actually got my sports book open here. Let's talk here a little bit. Chris, what do you like today? What are some of your best bets here for this Saturday?
I'm just making sure this one didn't move on me. Yeah, okay. I like UConn as a 3-point dog. I'm not playing it less than a field goal, though. But I watched that Georgia State-Rhode Island game last week. Rhode Island went up and down the field on this defense. We knew this was going to be a problem. They lost 2 all-conference players in their secondary, including Antavis Lane. Man, I think UConn can win this game. I have them favored, actually. That Georgia State team is really, really concerning. I think they can run on them. I think they can throw on them. This defense is a disaster. And I thought UConn's defense actually played pretty well against NC State. I think part of that was maybe NC State self-inflicted wounds, but I expected UConn to have an okay defense, and it looks like they probably will. So I understand why Georgia State is favored, but I like UConn catching 3. This number, I don't think it moved out of range quite yet. But I talked earlier on the show about how I like Southern Illinois, or was that maybe it was pre-show? I have Southern Illinois favored against Northern Illinois, the Battle of the Illinois. You're getting 7 at most books. I opened at 7.5. I don't see that anymore. But I like if you're getting it's starting to move out of that range. It's going to 6.5. So if you can get a touchdown, I like the Salukis here a lot. Actually, I think they can win this game. They're a higher end FCS team. I power rank them above Northern Illinois, which is why I have them favored, even though Northern Illinois is home. Northern Illinois had a big win against Boston College last week, but it's Boston College. Like I'd probably pick Southern Illinois over Boston College as well. But yeah, a touchdown's just too much in this case for me. This one moved. Can I get a New Mexico State plus 10 at all? Or is that gone? If I can get it at double digits, I'm in on it. Yeah, I can. Okay. Caesars has it as a 10. New Mexico State is not 10 points worse than Liberty. They're not. And I didn't like what I saw from Liberty last week against Bowling Green. I thought they were pretty underwhelming. But if I'm getting double digits here, I really don't mind backing New Mexico State. They were in that shootout where they lost week 1 to Massachusetts, but they looked better against Western Illinois last week. And I think I like this offense enough. And Liberty doesn't really scare me, to be honest. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. So if you're going to give me double digits in a high-scoring game where I'm not super confident about either of these teams, give me the one that's 10-point dogs. So I like New Mexico State there. And I got to check. All these numbers are moving so quickly this morning. Yeah, okay, I can still get it. Idaho minus 2.5 against Nevada. Idaho's a top 10 team in the FCS. Johnny McCoy, their quarterback. I think he won Freshman of the Year last year. He's a really solid player. I don't know that Nevada has a player on their team that's as talented as Giovanni McCoy is. So I'm taking Idaho. I'm taking them under a field goal if I can get it, and I can at DK and FanDuel, 118 at DK. I just don't like this Nevada team. I still don't like it. Their quarterback situation is a disaster. Their best running back is like a little banged up, and Idaho, I think, wants to make a statement. So I'm playing Idaho 3. I was hoping that it would open and Idaho would be a dog, but we did not get that this morning, unfortunately. It opened at 2 and has now moved to 3 in most places. But I'm on Idaho this week. I really think this is a good matchup for them. We were just digging like real deep.
Seriously,
real deep. We listen. We did the same thing last week though on our plays. Went 4-0 on them. You know, we had that backdoor cover for Western Kentucky, but I'm not gonna. Well, it's not a backdoor, but Western Kentucky covered probably shouldn't have. But we were killing it last week. We keeping the momentum going.
What about Eastern Michigan, real quick, Chris? Because you didn't talk about them at all. I know that line's moved a little bit. I don't see 21 a lot of places anymore. It's 20.5 now.
Yeah, I still like it. Yeah, I think I have that on the sheet. I liked it at 21 because it was 3 touchdowns. Yeah. But Chris Creighton, the head coach at Eastern Michigan, is really good head coach, I think, for the MAC. And he covers a lot. And so he plays his team really competitively. 3 touchdowns against the Minnesota offense that I did not think looked particularly good last week. Quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis, which we were gaslit into believing was good by the Minnesota beat reporters. A 20.5 is probably still a play, but I liked it more at 21. But, I mean, are you really going to trust Minnesota to win by 3 touchdowns against a really well-coached Eastern Michigan team? I find that hard to believe, but I'm on it at 21. And, I mean, if you can find a 20.5 still, I think that's a bad value. I've seen it move more than that, actually. This morning, I think, at Circa, it was 19.
Oof.
So there's 20.5 still out there for sure, I think. But I'm not playing it below 20. You got to get it there for sure. But, yeah, I like Eastern Michigan. I just think they're a well-coached team. And a well-coached team versus a really bad quarterback, I'll back them.
All right, Nick, over to you.
Well, so one, I worry that maybe we're getting a little greedy here, Mox, because we were 4-0 last week between the two of us, had 2 picks each, and we both went with more than 2 this week. But
I know,
and a couple of my 2 favorites, quite honestly, are not moving in my direction. So somebody, I guess, knows something that I don't know, or that my projections aren't able to capture, because my favorite game of the week, I think, is really moving against me. Houston, in my primary projection model, is more than a 14-point favorite. They are 14.65 in the team strength model. The official line that I grade against each week, which we release on the Campus2Canton Discord on Tuesdays, the line was 9.5, Houston at Rice. It is now down to 7.5, and Chris, you said you saw a 7 at Circa.
I have a 7 too. Yeah,
that's not great news for me, honestly. But Houston, I do believe, is the better team. They're certainly the more talented team, even though my talent model isn't as high. It still has Houston as a significant favorite, 8.5. So now all three models are on the side of the Cougars in this one. And the stats only model has it at 2 touchdowns also. So that one I feel a little more confident in right now than the talent model in general. But this is a road game, but it's crosstown. So Houston, slept in its own bed last night, which to me matters a little bit. I actually downgraded the home field advantage here. There's a pretty good chance, I think, there's going to be twice as many Houston fans as there will Rice fans in the stadium. But there just must be something that I don't know, because my projections are much higher on Houston in this one. And somebody obviously who has a lot of respect is on the Rice side.
Can I follow up real quick? So my numbers have Houston as a double-digit favorite as well. I didn't really adjust a whole lot for Rice, but I thought that their performance last week was really good, which is part of why I think it's getting bet down from where it was at 9.5 earlier this week. I will say, if it hits 6.5 for Houston, though, I'm firing on that. It's not an official play, but I mean, if we get under touchdown, I'm not trusting this Rice offense to keep up with Houston to that point. So I endorse this from a numbers perspective as well.
Well, in Houston, according to collegefootballdata.com, their post-game win expectancy, obviously they beat UTSA last week, but had a 19% post-game win expectancy. So they didn't play particularly well. I mean, we saw it, but then also, the underlying numbers agree with that. So, could definitely be wrong, but I think that's I also did a study a couple of years ago where teams that are close geographically, I looked at teams under 100 miles, and this one they're like a few miles. The team on the road has a pretty strong track record over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I think we overestimate home field advantage in those situations a bit. But another one that doesn't seem to be moving in my direction that I kind of like, and the numbers definitely do, is Troy at Kansas State. And Troy is a team, the way I do roster numbers, we do sort of the raw projections coming out of high school, the 247, on 3, all that sort of stuff. But then we adjust for experience and career production. And Troy grades out quite well. Pretty experienced team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And Kansas State, as you might expect, doesn't necessarily grade out all that well because they just don't have those raw talent numbers to start with, and they're a relatively young team in some spots. So my numbers are probably a little high on Troy. Maybe they're a little low on Kansas State, but the primary model here has K-State as less than a 7-point favorite. So there's a lot of projected value there. The talent edge model, again, maybe overrating one and underrating the other, but has it at about a field goal with K-State favored. And that is at home. That is with a home field advantage adjustment. So these teams are basically even in the talent numbers if it were a neutral field. And then the stats only model, which traditionally really likes K-State, still has this at under 2 touchdowns. So 13.5 in that model. So, again, somebody who has more respect than I do, certainly, or knows something I don't. This moved. I think it was 15.5 when we did it officially, and it's now 17. Looks like at Caesars. But we're on Troy to cover here, and I don't think it's crazy to think that Troy has a chance to win this one outright. We've seen K-State slip up in non-conference play before. And I don't know. I kind of like Troy this week, and so I'll take the 17.5 there. And then, coming off of last week, UTSA was sloppy, didn't look good offensively. There still sounds like, last I heard, JT Clark is a game time decision. Not 100% sold on how healthy Frank Harris is, but still UTSA minus 13. All my projection models are pretty heavy on the Roadrunners in this one. I did give Texas State a little bit of a manual adjustment up. Was impressed with what I saw from them last week. Do think they are legitimately an improved team. But I think UTSA is better than what we saw last week. Texas State maybe not quite as good. So I think that UTSA is going to win by 2 touchdowns or more.
Would you play it at 14?
Let's see. So the just lost it. UTSA. I've got them as 17, almost 17.5 point favorites. All 3 models are over 14. So yeah.
Because I think, the only place available at 13.5 is Caesars. Everywhere else is kind of moving through that 14, 14.5.
So this one actually, one moved in my direction here, but yeah, see still a little bit of value, especially in the 2 models that I at this point in the season I trust a little bit more. Both of which have them over 17.
All right, there we go. So I actually just played a couple of those while we were sitting here. We shall see. If I come back. Same. Come back here a little richer. We're cutting that segment, or poor. We're cutting that segment a little bit for next week. All right,
won't be greedy next week.
Yeah. Okay. You just got to reset after a bad week. Yeah, you build it back up again. Game selections. Every week we pick a handful of games from around the country against the spread. These lines are all from DK as of noon-ish yesterday, so they might have moved a tiny bit, but probably not a ton. Guys, Ole Miss at Tulane. And I don't know, this line might actually be moving with the news on Michael Pratt, which I haven't seen an update on, but he's a game time decision, the quarterback there for Tulane today. But we have it at 7.5 here when we picked.
There's still 7.5 out there. Most of the places are 8, though.
Okay. It's 8.5 at DraftKings. But yeah.
Wow, let's move the whole point. Okay. We're going to keep it at 7.5 just for our purposes here. Colin, what do you like here?
Yeah, I like Ole Miss in this one. Honestly, even if Michael Pratt does play, I still like it around a touchdown. And if Michael Pratt doesn't play, I think that this line is way too low. But I think Ole Miss is just a better team. I think that all around offensively, this is going to be a pretty potent and explosive team all year.
Nick?
I'm on Tulane. The projections, they were close. But the stats model actually really likes Tulane, has this as basically a coin flip. The primary model, it's right at 7.5, but a little bit under. And this is speculation on my part, but I saw the play for Pratt where he got banged up last week. He was limping afterward, but continued to play, I believe. And my hunch is that he will play. Now, will he be 100%? Maybe not, but I expect him to play, and I think Tulane can keep this one close, even with Pratt maybe slightly limited.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm concerned about Pratt's, not his availability, but his ability to use his mobility, which is something that's really important to his game. So that scares me. However, I am on Ole Miss as long as it stays below 9. If it gets to 9, I'll probably buy back on Tulane, but I'm back in Ole Miss for now. Liked it more when it was 7, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I like Ole Miss here at the 7.5 line. Not playing anything else. Texas A&M, number 23. They're going to Miami this week. That kicks off at 3:30 Eastern here. Texas A&M we have as a 3-point favorite. Colin, lead us off.
Yeah, I think Texas A&M is just a better team here as well. And we saw, granted, it was a poor opponent last week, but we saw this Texas A&M offense start to click like we kind of hoped they would this year with, sophomore and new starting quarterback Connor Wigman, stud wide receiver Evan Stewart. The running backs even looked pretty good in this one. I just think Texas A&M is a better overall team. I do think it's going to be really close, but I think a field goals give me Texas A&M.
Nick?
I have Miami winning outright. Little bit of a surprise, but Miami, the roster strength numbers that I have ranked number 1 defensively. So most talented defense in the country, at least the way that I calculate it. And I saw some really positive signs last week. I know it was just against Miami of Ohio, but thought the defense played really, really well. Saw some things I liked out of the offense also. And I know Texas A&M is ranked team, has a little bit of positive momentum, but I don't think there's really much of a gap at all between these two. So Miami is less than a 1-point favorite in my numbers, but the talent edge actually closer to a touchdown, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise, but at least the way I the numbers say Miami's a more talented team. So I feel okay about it.
Chris?
So I actually project this game on the dot 2.9, Texas A&M favored. So not a significant edge at all. But I do like the Aggies. I think they're trending in the right direction. I actually feel confident for the first time about their play calling with Petrino. So I'm on. I liked what I saw from Connor Wigman. I'm on the Aggies this week.
Likewise, I think they're a better team here. I think they win by 7 to 10 points in this one. 15 Oregon. They're going to Texas Tech. I think this is an interesting one. Texas Tech, obviously, with a disappointing loss last week to Wyoming. Oregon, we've got the line here that we're picking at 6.5. Colin, what do you like?
Yeah, give me Oregon here for sure, under a touchdown. And I think that Oregon could really take advantage of this Texas Tech defense that surrendered a ton of points last week to Wyoming. I think this Oregon offense is clicking, and Bo Nix for Heisman, bodacious. So give me Oregon.
Nick?
I thought that when my projections were updated for the week, I was like, okay, we're kind of we're a little high on Texas Tech here. I think this could be a sneaky opportunity for them at getting Oregon at home. But it turns out that the odds makers were thinking along the same lines, because my projection actually came out with Oregon covering the 6.5. And I was a bit surprised that the line was that low, because this does seem like a tricky, difficult spot for a team that Oregon that maybe was not quite as good as the 81 points they put up last week, in Texas Tech, probably not as bad as the loss at Wyoming. So this is a tricky spot, but I do have Oregon covering.
I do as well. I made this game 7.2, so put me on the Ducks.
Yep, quack, quack. Oregon takes this one here for me. Texas at Alabama, the biggest game of the day, 11 Texas for Alabama. Texas almost pulled this one off last year. We have this line as of yesterday. Alabama is 7-point favorites. Colin?
Texas is back, baby. Texas getting the W in this one. I think that they're just a better overall team right now than Alabama, which feels really weird to say, but Jalen Milroe did look better than expected last week, but I still don't really trust him as a passer. So give me Texas here.
I disagree. I don't think Texas is the better team, but I do have them covering.
Chris?
I made it 6.2. I took Texas 7.5 in the offseason. We're riding.
That Texas offensive line worries me a little bit. I think Alabama covers. I'll go against the people here on this one. Last game here, Wisconsin 5.5-point favorites against Washington State. This was an interesting game last year. I'm on Washington State. Colin, who do you like here?
I like Wisconsin. I just think they're better.
Nick?
Yeah, I've got Wisconsin covering, but just barely, and the numbers are right on, basically.
Sorry, what's the line?
5.5.
I have Washington State actually favored in this game, so I'm gonna go with Washington State. I think they beat Wisconsin. I'm really worried about the dairy raid. Don't think it's clicking quite yet.
Yeah, it did not look great last week, for sure. All right, well, that is going to do it for our show, The Tailgate, this week, guys. We'll be back next week to cover all of the games. Good luck in your fantasy leagues and your betting, your prize picks, all of it. I hope everybody wins a lot of money this week. I hope I win a lot of money this week. If I win enough, maybe I won't be here next week. Enjoy the slate today, guys.